And I can't stop watching that dog and thinking, why does it do that? And we take it out into the street, and if it meets another dog, do you know what it does? It smells its bottom. And I think, gosh, wouldn't it be easy if we did that? But oh no, we have to complicate matters, because I was at this cocktail party, and you can see there are some people, and they immediately shake hands with people they don't know. And there were some people there from Southeast Asia, and they have a tendency to bow like this, and there were some very global, international people there, and they did everything at once, and sort of knocked themselves out. And so everyone's got a drink in their hand, and as an anthropologist, you just observe. And there was a guy from Spain, and he said, well, my name is Juan Carlos de Jesus, de Vázquez, de Martínez, de la Guayez, de la Vázquez, de la López, de la López, de la López, you see? And I thought, gosh, that's interesting. His whole culture is in that name somewhere. His status in life, well, everything. And the Swedish delegate said, yes, and my name is Bo Ek. What an interesting contrast. We have two syllables, Bo Ek, and Ek is an oak tree. So it starts to tell you something about the culture and the nearness to nature. There was a pompous Brit there, and I say pompous because I'm a Brit myself and I can say things like that. And he said, well, my name is Sir Charles Fotherington Smythe. And the American delegate insisted on calling him Chuck. And it was not a good idea, I can tell you. And there's also somebody, I said, all this is going on. I said, you just have to look and observe. And there was a guy from Poland who said, my name is Mr. And we thought, God, we're never going to manage that. And he said, don't worry, to help you, here is my business card. But it didn't help. And it was rather like going to have your eyes tested. You know when you have to read all those letters? His business card looked like that, didn't it? And there was a guy from Finland, and well, he stood like 5 meters away from everybody else. Surprise, surprise. On his own, with a drink or 5. And believe it or not, his name was Anti. How can you go through life and be so negative? Hello, I'm just Anti. So by the end of the evening, we called him Antisocial. I don't know, is anybody from Norway here this evening? Oh, there you are. Well, there was a guy from the... Yes, okay, we've seen him. When he's rich, he thinks he can do anything he likes. Congratulations for today, by the way. Well done, Shep, great. And there was a guy from Norway, and his name was Odd. Can you imagine going through life and say, hello, I'm Odd? Make it's a real impression. And actually, just on Monday, I was in Brussels. And once again, you know, you have these sort of meeting situations. We've been in these meeting situations hundreds of times. And we've got the 28 delegates of the European Union and the chairman. And the chairman starts the meeting and says exactly what nobody wants the chairman to say. He said, I want to go round the table and everybody introduce themselves. Oh, no. Oh, must we do this every time? And you can see people going... So they don't even listen to the first 4 people. And some people started to write things down. You think, what are they writing? My name is... And these are professional people. And you know, one person starts off and says, my name is blah, blah, but I work with blah, 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 and I have 2 children. So, I'm British. I hate children. I don't want to know. It's not a point in their favour. And the next person starts off in exactly the same way. Now, I used to work for the United Nations, all right? And I can tell you, wherever you go in the world, it's the same pattern. And so the next person starts and says, you know, my name is blah, 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 I work with blah, 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 and I've got 5 children. So you think, God, it's getting worse, you must be Catholic. I'm a Catholic too, so I can say something like that. So I look at, but anyway, so the Swedish delegate stood up. We were going around the table, all right, and the Swedish delegate stood up. I mean, talk about breaking, it was revolutionary. And you can say what you like about Swedes, but revolutionary is not one of them. I live here now, so I can say that. And so he stood up and he said, "My name is Lily Leaf." Just like you, people said, "What?" He said, "My name is Lily Leaf. It could have been a mountain by a stream, or it could have been a twig from a lime tree, but it's not. It's Lily Leaf, because in Swedish my name is Liljeblad, which is a direct translation of lily leaf. Or it could have been Bergström, which is a mountain by a stream. Or it could have been Lindqvist, which is a twig from a lime tree, you see? And he linked this to the Scandinavian, Nordic love of nature, and then he sat down. That man has understood communication. You can imagine the poor person who was going to follow him. Now, how do you follow a show like that? But anyway, so that's what I do, that's who I am, and we look at cross-border teamwork. I don't believe that we will ever get to know each other 100%. Let's get real, all right? Try and get to know yourself 100%. Maybe an impossibility. And I was reminded of this at a conference in New York a couple of months ago. And it was a really dreadful conference. It was a complete fiasco. And you know, as anthropologists know, we have certain things in common as people. You know, we have to eat and breathe. We know we are going to die. Some of you look, ooh. You might think you're going somewhere, but we have to die. And at this conference, we were slowly being bored to death, I can tell you. But we had another thing in common. Nobody particularly thought the conference was any good. There were different nationalities there. There were some of these people. There must be one or two here. There must be Herr Dr. von Stochenbochen somewhere. And Herr Professor von Orben. Where's the Germans? Come on, Germans. We love you, really. And it's the new Europe, you've got to laugh, right? And the interesting thing with the Germans is they were not very happy, just like everybody else. We were not happy with this conference. And so they said, I don't agree. So you knew exactly what they were thinking, because their culture says, say it as it is. Die Wahrheit, die musst du raus. We can back it up with loads of facts and figures, and we can have nice long sentences a mile long. The Germans are the best listeners in the world because they have got no idea what the presentation is about until the verb comes on the end. We have some of these people. I'm sure we have one or two here, I've heard. There we are, yes. There we are. And where do you come from, sir? Oh dear. And, well, it's all right. Don't even know where it is. And so we have these people, and you know as well as I do, these people never say what they mean. It's the exact opposite to the Germans, right? And so what did they say? Well, they say, well, that's an interesting idea. And believe me, if they say it's interesting, it isn't. And it wasn't their fault. It was not their fault that the conference was a fiasco. When they say that you gotta be kidding me, you gotta be joking, right? And here we had a bit of a cultural clash with the Germans, because the Germans are joking, but who is joking? And we had some people from Southeast Asia, and they said, so, but they meant the same as the Germans. And actually, I think I've heard some Russian here this evening. Didn't I hear some Russian? There, oh my goodness! Right? Now the thing is that there weren't many Russians at this conference. There was one, and it just reminded me when you came in, and all he kept just saying the whole conference was, but in Russia it's different. No matter what we talked about, no matter if we had a cup of coffee, but in Russia it's different. Everything was different in Russia. So there you are. We have some of the... And you could tell what these people were thinking, even before they opened La Bouche, because it was the body language. picture, right? And the interesting thing is that they meant the same as everybody else. That's the interesting thing. Then we have some of these people. Italy is not a country. Italy is in emotion. And what did they say? Well, they were just looking for somebody who could speak Italian, basically. They hadn't understood much of what was going on. Nice people, though. Nice. They seem very nice. And we're in the Nordic countries here. This is Denmark. Do we have a Dane? One, it's enough. And so your name is Preben? Preben? Preben. It's my show, you are Preben. And Preben, you see, those of us who have had the good fortune to work with Danes, we can almost hear them saying this, you see. And so the Danes, what did they say? Well, that's what they said. You can never trust these people because they sit at meetings, especially if there's lots of Swedes at the meetings. These people say, yeah, and they go home and do something completely different, right? Just to piss the Swedes off, basically. These are the individualists of the North, okay? So you've got to watch it. And Norway. And well, what did the Norwegians say? Well, nothing, because the conference finished after 4 o'clock and they weren't there. Never a Norwegian that works after 4 o'clock. They turn into monsters. If you have any work to do after 4 o'clock, call in the Swedes, pay them half the price, they'll do it. And actually, but Norwegian is actually a beautiful language, and especially when they sort of speak in English. I mean, if you think of, like, I'm depressed, I mean, you can really hear the sentiment behind I'm depressed. And in Swedish, I live in Sweden now, it's deprimerad. And you can feel it going down, so suicidal. But in Norwegian, it's, oh, yeah, deprimerad. And it's like, where's the party? And what did the Finns say after the conference? Well, nothing. Not a word. They didn't move a muscle. Not a muscle. I was in Finland just a couple of weeks ago, and it was at a coffee break, and there was a British guy and a Finn, and I'm telling you, when you do research, you just watch people and think, why? That's the bit. Try not to put in a judgment, try not to be critical, just, that's interesting, why? And so it was this British guy and this Finn, and they had a coffee break, and the Finn spoke. And I think he was on drugs, actually. But he was a very nice guy. Everybody's very nice. Let's face it, in business, most people are pretty decent, aren't they? We know who the bastards are, and it has nothing to do with we just know who they are. But most of us are pretty decent to each other. And so the Finnish guy, who's very decent, says to the British guy, would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a cup of coffee? And the British guy is very British. He said, oh, I don't mind if I do. And you could see this poor Finnish guy thinking, oh my God, is that a yes or a no? The one time he'd actually asked somebody, would you like a cup of coffee? He couldn't stand the answer, that poor man. And then we had these people. And these people, from an anthropologist's point of view, and this is why I'm here, because it's very interesting being in a culture that thinks they're normal and thinks that there's nothing special about them. Actually, they're totally weird. And they also like meetings. They go to meetings very often. It's a national hobby. So if they're not off having children, they're having meetings. That's what they do. And it all starts off with a Monday morning meeting, and it has a name. It's called a Måndagsmöte. And it means a Monday morning meeting. Now, why have a meeting on Monday morning? Because it's Monday! And they even have pre-meetings in Sweden. they have meetings before the meetings. They have meetings in case anybody has any questions. And most of us hear from civilized business cultures, so, well, isn't that why you have a big meeting on Thursday, in case anybody has any questions? And the Swedes say, no. We don't want any ugly questions at the meeting, because we want to finish on time, because we have to pick up the dog from the doggy kindergarten at 3:15. We can't stick around here while people have questions. Swedes were at the conference, and how did the Swedes react to this fiasco? Well, of course. Of course, that's how we solve problems. We'll get everybody to a meeting and we can discuss it, you see. And that's also very interesting because we all have problems. That's another thing we have in common, ladies and gentlemen. We solve problems. Doesn't matter where you go in the world. I've been in Central Africa. They have problems. We have to solve problems. And very often our culture has shown us the best way of dealing with the problems just there. I live here now. I've chosen to live here. I like the taxis and the long cold winters, it turns out. But they're actually very weird, and I'd like to give you one example before I go on. In this country, if you're having breakfast, most people like something to read, and if the morning newspaper doesn't come, it's not the same with this, you're with the paper. And if the morning newspaper doesn't come, the day doesn't get off to a good start. But never mind. Because you can always read the back of packets. There's so much information on the back of packets in Sweden. How to live a longer life, a better life, a healthier life. The death rate is still 100%. It's not working very well. And this is the back of a cornflakes packet in Sweden. Don't worry if your Swedish is not hot, I'll talk you through it. And it looks like this. And it's geared towards kids. It's barnens frukosidor, which means children's breakfast pages. So you know it's going to be good, because these people can talk to kids. They love their kids. And this is all about sense of taste and smell, about food and things like that. And very informative, and you're sitting around eating breakfast with your family. And if you come from Russia, for example, you're thinking, well, we love our children too. You know, and we like to educate our children with fun and things like that. This is universal, what it should be. This is the top half of the packet. You will now see the bottom half of the same packet. Do we have a cultural problem here or what? So whilst you are eating your cornflakes, you can see what happens to them at the other end. And look what they do it in. And this being so wonderfully, sweetly, strangely Swedish, next to it, we have a recipe. So if you eat the pie, you'll see what it looks like in about 24 hours' time. And I turned to my Swedish friends and family when I said, excuse me, don't you think this is a bit strange? A detailed diagram of the internal workings of your digestive system on the back of all that. And they say, yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I'd never have thought about it. You see, 200 years of neutrality have taught them never say yes or no. Not until you know which side is winning. But I mean, most of us, when we get that question, why do you do it like that? Most of us don't have an answer, because a lot of companies make a mistake. When we look across border, they start by looking at other cultures, about how they do it. And I say, well, that's very interesting. That's always step number 2. Step number 1 is, how do I do it? Why? Why do I think this is the best solution for this? Where does that come from? There's always an answer there somewhere. In Washington, they have this wonderful Nordic embassy, and it's a showpiece for Nordic architecture and Nordic materials. It's absolutely beautiful. You just want to get down and lick the floor. It's gorgeous. And we had this function with all these Nordic diplomats, politicians, and business people, and they had to do something whilst they were mingling, because Finns hate this kind of thing. But they like the drink, but not the mingling. And it was cut the crap and just give me drink. And so we asked them what they thought of each other and tried to sort of leave some of the old stereotypes away and what they think of each other. And here are the results of what they thought of the Swedes. So these are serious people, see? And so we have Number one, when we look at different cultures, everything should be relative, but I think you would agree with me, ladies and gentlemen, we could take the word relatively away from here. And we'll just state the fact. Decision making is slow because it's a process. Swedes love things beginning with P. If it's a process, it's a policy, it's planning, and it's a project, and all these take time. And we've got to get people involved. It's involvement is the name of the game. Has anybody asked what Ulla Britt on the reception, what she thinks? No, we have to have another meeting. And it's constantly getting people involved, and at these meetings you shouldn't ask too many questions because we don't do that. It has, like, you know, sort of on the agenda, any other questions, and just, it's just there for good form. The best point for Swedes is the last point because it says the date and the time of the next meeting. Life continues the way we love it. There is another meeting to look forward to. So decision making, and they keep to contracts because they've spent 6 months of their lives discussing the contract, and once it's signed in blood. And there's no way they're going to change it. So we have two ways of looking at this. One is they are really reliable. When they say we'll do it, they do it. And the other one is that flexibility may not have been top of the list of their, priorities. So they sign it and they just go. No, shall we? No. And they do. The world changes, things happen. And equality throughout. That's why we get Ulla Britt in from the reception and ask her dog what he thinks because it's very important. And then, of course, we have the Finns. That's what we have in common here, basically, Swedes and Finns, all right? So I can't take every nationality, I should be here all evening. And here we have the three things that sort of show what the Finns are like. It's action. It's all in the doing, see? And this frightens the Swedes. Now we've got to discuss it first. So they Finns. If you say to the Swedes you have 2 hours, they'll say, well, because then we can have coffee first. And then we can have a meeting to decide all the different roles in the team. And then we have coffee again. And if you say we have 2 hours to a Finn, they go, right, how much can I do in those 2 hours? They start there and then. No waste of time. So in Finland, time is something quantitative. How much can I do? In Sweden, time is qualitative. And in Swedish, they have something, I'll say it in Swedish and translate it. They say, and it means it has to take the time it takes. And if it takes a long time, it will be done well. So the Finns are saying, come on! And clear, quick, and crisp communication. No messing around. Right, so no, I used to give presentation techniques to Finnish engineers. Get the picture? Presentation techniques to Finnish engineers. Now, they were excellent engineers, no question. When God gave out presentation techniques, I think he missed them out. Because it was in the days of the overhead projector, remember those? And there was a guy called Pekka, and he was standing right in front of that light. He couldn't open his eyes. Right in front of the screen, giving this awful presentation. Standing like this. This is the naked position. That's the Prince Charles, that's the naked position. You're blinded by this light, talking, and I'm sitting at the back. I thought, I've got to give this man feedback. What do I do? What do I say? I mean, he's doing irreparable damage to his eyes. And so after a while, I said, Pekka, may I just come in here and disturb you for a second or two? I wonder if I could possibly say one or two things. You might going to consider the fact that you may be doing some irreparable damage to your eyes by standing in front of it. I think it would be to your advantage if you were to consider, when you have a second, moving either to the left or the right, the choice is yours. And I always remember him standing there like this, and he said, do you want me to move or not? And I said, move, and he went, and it was the first time I realised you could give one-worded commands or instructions to somebody, because Brits tend to sort of, I was in Belgium. I think some Belgians here. I think I feel that there are some Belgians. Oh, hello. Are you Walloons or Flems? Flemish. Good. And I'm going to say good anyway, you know, it's the new Europe. And so anyway, so I was somewhere last in Belgium, and there was a British guy. He said to this Belgian woman, he said, when you've got a minute, he was the boss, when you've got a minute, and I looked at her and she walked away, and I thought, what's she going away for? And I ran after her, and I said, you've got to come back. And she said, why? I don't have my minute yet. And I said, but it doesn't mean when you've got, he means now. And he said, well, why didn't he say it? I said, because we don't. So anyway, so it's the opposite of clear, quick and crisp, and quick and effective change, so they change. And so there you are. And I've looked at how the Nordic countries make decisions. That's another thing that affects everyday work. And here we have the Swedish model. This is the Swedish model. And so here we have the process. It's called, that thing going round at the top, it's called the förankring process, which is what the Americans would call getting your ducks in a row. Right? Getting on the same page. And it tends to take a long time. And Johan, well, he wasn't here last week, so we have to have another meeting. And we have to send everything to EU to see what they say. And then we have to have another meeting. We have one more. And we can't make a decision until after Christmas and New Year. And we can't do that either because we have to wait till after Easter. Well, that comes late. Then it's spring. We can't make a decision in spring because we have to get the boats in the water. We make a decision after the summer. Well, then people are away for 3 months. And so we'll make a decision in the autumn, but they can't do that because they get depressed. They call it höstdepression. So they all get depressed and miserable. So they say, okay, we'll make a decision after Christmas and New Year. And then once they make a decision, as I said to you, the new show. Now, Preben, Danes and Swedes are very similar, as we know. We have a lot in common, but there are some differences, and usually these come out when we're working. So this is the Danish pattern. The Danes get going straight away. It's a little country, we've got to make a mark here, they get going. And then they get to the sort of first bit going round there, and they think, to go ahead there. It's all going wrong. Stop, and the Swedes are going, and the Danes have to deal with it, and they have to change their minds, and they change things, because it's driving the Swedes mad, it's bloody Danes. And then they get it all sorted out, and then they go on to like the next process, and then they have to stop again, but then in the end they get there. So they're learning by doing, or learning by doing. And here we have Norway. Norway gets off to a bit of a slow start because they're all out skiing and spending their trillions of money. And so they get on, so they're sort of, the Swedes are going, meetings, and sir from Norway, yes, do you have something in Norwegian called skippertak? Can you say it? That's what I said. And doesn't it mean like you sort of basically don't do an awful lot until you're getting near the deadline, and everybody has to do everything very quickly, everybody help out to get to the deadline so you get it done? Isn't that right? Yes. So it's the exact opposite in Sweden, because they've been doing it for 6 months, and the Norwegians have been eating goat's cheese, and they realise, my God, we've got to get this done. So there's a major panic of about here, and they all help each other. So you can see the Swedes are getting rather annoyed. And then we have, oh bless them, the Finns. Minimal discussion. We can't waste our lives talking to people, and we just get on with it. It's in the doing, you see. And this is what happens, when you get the Nordic countries working together. And as I told you, I could get really academic with you, but you don't need to get academic. You just do, and everybody who works knows it. That's exactly what goes on, you see. So there you are. So that's to remind you. Time magazine asked this question. Time magazine asked this question on the internet. Should the boss have all the answers? Because this is another area that affects cross-border teams. What we expect of the boss, all right, or the project leader, the person in charge. Should the boss have all the answers? And here is a selection of answers that came out saying, yes, the boss should have all the answers. So I think these 7% here were just joking, right? Nobody expects them to have any answers. Because especially in Swedish and Danish and Norwegian management, there's a lot of delegation, especially in Swedish. So the boss can say, well, I don't know, I've got no idea, and he gets much more respect for saying, I don't know. And he says, I don't know, but I'll get him involved, right? And they keep dishing out all this responsibility. This is all up, more responsibility, and they all get depressed in the autumn because they've got too much responsibility, you see. And the interesting thing is that these people here are making cars with the people on the top of the list, and this affects every day of work, our expectations of the boss. So there you are. This is, no, I can't go to that. That's all terrible. I'm not going to go to that. Oh, God, I'm got time. I'm going to go soon anyway. You're hungry. You must be starving. And we had some, sir, from Rochdale. Yes. You have English as a mother tongue. I'm not going to be rude. That's quite okay. But do you know any other languages? You know what they say, if you know 3 languages, you are trilingual. If you know 2 languages, you are bilingual. If you know 1 language, there he is. And that's actually quite typical, isn't it? I mean, it's quite typical of English speakers. We just don't get to learn other languages, and you can have an opinion on it if you like. So for all of you who actually speak English as a foreign, aren't you impressed, sir? I mean, all these people who speak English as a foreign language, they work in English and they can understand. It's absolutely impressive. Well, I hope you can understand English, otherwise this has been a waste of my time. But English is rather crazy, you know, and that's why I'll take my hat off to all of you. I have actually learnt other languages, and I know how complex languages can be, and English especially. And English is a bit crazy. Here are some examples of how crazy English is. So the first one there is pretty ugly. I don't like it anyway, it's pretty ugly. How can it be pretty ugly? It's 2 contrasts. And then we have quite a few. A few are just like 2 or 3, but there were quite a few people at the dinner. It means there were many. How can that be? As cold as hell. That's not what the Bible says. And you can be as hot as hell as well, but that's something completely different. How can you be half naked? It's like being half pregnant. It's useless. And recorded live. Who wants something recorded dead? Think about it. Awfully good. A one-night stand. But who's standing? And watch your head. How can you do that? I was going out of a door with a very tall Greek person. I said, watch your head. He said, but that is impossible. And I'd never actually thought about that before. It's like trying to bite your own teeth. And I haven't lived here. I was born in London many years ago, and I haven't lived actually in England for a long, long time. I've lived more abroad than in England. And you know, some of us who have worked abroad or lived abroad, we know that there is sometimes a sentimental attachment to your home. Very accessible, but there's a sentimental attachment. And sometimes you can go back home and you think, oh, I've missed this, and I didn't realise, or I don't understand this anymore, things have changed. But I was in London, this in the summer, and I was in the underground, and I saw this, and I just thought, yes, I'm home. And it was an advert on the underground. And this is an advert for a funeral home, right? So these are the people who bury you, drumming up more business. And I looked at that and said, yes, I'm home now. You see, this is what they do. And I've got to finish this off. And as I told you, I go around helping people get to terms with differences and similarities or whatever. And I always say you've got to start with yourself. It's no good looking at other people first. You've got to look at yourself. Why am I as I am? And try and make some sense out of that first. And I have a very good friend, and he said, Colin, you know, all you have to do, if you really want to understand cultural differences, is to look at toilet signs the world over. And I thought, that's a challenge, never thought of that. So I did. I looked at toilet signs the world over, and this is the result of my research. Here we have La Belle France. Right? In France, men and women do it together. And what does this tell you about the German culture? It's a long way to Tipperary, as the song goes. This is Poland. You have to be a triangle or a circle. And you're all sitting there thinking, I wonder which one I am. And whichever one you decide, it will be wrong, believe me. Here we have Japan. And you have to have a university degree to understand what the hell to do once you've had a pee. And they actually have a remote control. I mean, where are you going? You're sitting on the loo, for God's sake. And here we have Sweden. Look at those eyes. Something is going on here. And these normal people, this is a sign. There are some Swedes, where are you, Swedes? Yes. I don't want to explain this yet, but do you know what this is going on here? He does. This gentleman here asked him, what's your name? Torsten or something. What's your name? Martin.